The girl's hands trembled as she dipped the clay jar into the river, but not from the cold water. She glanced over, her shoulder for the third time in as many minutes, her dark eyes scanning the tree with the kind of fear that comes from knowing exactly what waits on the other side. 3 days. That's all she had left. 3 days before they would dress her in ceremony clothes and hand her to a man whose very presence made her skin crawl. 3 days before her life would no longer be her own. She didn't know the cowboy was watching from the ridge above, studying her the way someone studies a wounded animal with caution and something close to recognition. He'd seen that look before in another life he'd buried. The look of someone trapped. Cobb been coming to this river every morning for 2 weeks. Always alone, always quick. The women back at camp whispered that she was running, that her spirit was already gone, even though her body remained. They weren't wrong. She'd memorized every rock, every bend where the current slowed enough to fill her jars without splashing. Speed mattered now. The less time away from watchful eyes, the fewer questions about where she'd been or what she might be. Planning. She knew the elders were taking precautions. Her cousin Nala slept across the entrance to their shelter now, a silent guard disguised as companionship. 2 men from the council took turns passing by throughout the day, their routes too regular to be coincidence. They smiled when they saw her, offered empty words about honor and duty, but their eyes held warning. She was valuable now, a bridge between fractured groups, and bridges didn't get to choose where they were built. The arrangement had been decided 3 months ago during the long talks that followed the drought and the hunger that came with it. Takakota, the man they'd chosen for her, controlled access to water sources in the Northern Territory. His people had what hers needed. The cost of that access was her. Simple as trading goods, except the goods had a heartbeat and dreams that were slowly suffocating under the weight of other people's survival. She'd seen Takakota twice. The first time, he'd barely looked at her, addressing only the elder man as if she were another horse to be evaluated and purchased. The second time, he brought his hand across the face of a boy who'd stumbled near his path. The crack of impact had echoed in her chest. That night, she'd touched her own cheek in the darkness, imagining what her life would become. Royce Barrett didn't mean to come back to the river. He told himself yesterday was the last time, that watching her was pointless and probably wrong. But his horse had carried him to the same ridge at the same hour, and he'd let it happen. He recognized the set of her shoulders, the way she moved like someone always expecting a blow. He'd worn that posture once back when his world had collapsed, and he'd learned that some cages don't need bars. He should ride away. Her troubles weren't his. And he'd learned years ago that trying to fix broken things usually just got you cut. But something kept him there on that ridge, hidden in the shadow of cedar trees, watching as she filled her jars with hands that shook. She looked up suddenly directly at where he sat. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance, hers wide and desperate, his weathered and weary. Neither moved. The morning air hung thick between them, heavy with things unsaid. Then voices carried from the direction of her camp, sharp and male. Her head snapped toward the sound, every muscle in her body going rigid. She grabbed her jars with barely controlled panic and started back, but not before looking once more at the ridge. At him. Royce sat frozen as she disappeared into the brush. That look. He knew that look. It was the same one he'd seen in the mirror the day he decided that death was easier than living in a world designed by other people's cruelty. But he'd been wrong then. Death hadn't been easier. It had just been permanent. He touched the res, ready to turn away, to let this be another stranger story he'd witnessed and forgotten, except something in that final glance stopped him. It wasn't plea. It wasn't even hope. It was recognition. She'd seen him, not just his presence, but something deeper. The same trapped animal awareness that he carried in his chest every waking moment. And now she knew he existed. A stranger on a ridge. Someone outside the circle of elders and arrangements and duty. Someone who might understand that. Some cages, no matter how they're justified, are still cages. Royce turned his horse toward his camp, but the image of her eyes followed him like a brand. 3 days, the voices had said. Whatever was coming for her was coming fast, and for reasons he couldn't quite name yet, that bothered him more than it should. The question that would haunt him for the next 72 hours had already begun forming. What do you do when you recognize yourself in someone else's drowning? Freedom tastes like dust in your mouth when you've forgotten what it feels like. Cod spent the entire night staring at the shelter's hide ceiling, counting the hours until dawn, when she could return to the river. Not for water. The jars from yesterday still sat full in the corner. She needed to see if the stranger would be there again, if he was real. The camp stirred before sunrise. Smoke from cooking fires drifted through the morning cold, carrying the smell of corn cakes and dried meat. Women moved between shelters, with practice efficiency, preparing for another day of survival that looked identical to the one before. Ka forced herself to wait to help with the morning tasks, to appear calm. Nakla watched her, with worried eyes, but said nothing. When she finally picked up the jars and headed toward the river, 2 women fell in a step behind her. Not following, they insisted, just happening to need water at the same time. The lie sat, transparent between them, but no one acknowledged it. This was her life now. Accompanied, monitored, kept safe from her own choices. She filled the jars slowly, hoping they'd grow impatient and leave. They didn't. They settled on a flat rock nearby, talking in low voices about the upcoming ceremony, about the honor being bestowed on Ka's family, about how fortunate she was. Their words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples of nausea in her stomach. But then, one of them spotted a snake near the path and called out. Both women moved toward it, concerned it might be venomous. In that brief moment of distraction, Kaya looked up at the ridge. He was there, exactly where he'd been yesterday, a dark silhouette against the pale morning sky. This time, she didn't just glance. She held his gaze long enough to make it deliberate, long enough to communicate something she couldn't name, but felt burning in her chest. Help me see me understand that I'm drowning. Royce felt the weight of that looked like a physical force. He'd spent all of yesterday trying to convince himself to stay away, that this wasn't his fight, that getting involved would only end in blood and regret. He'd almost succeeded, but Dawn had found him, riding toward the ridge again, drawn by something stronger than common sense. Now, watching her surrounded by guards, disguised as companions, he understood the full measure of her cage. She wasn't just being forced into marriage. She was being erased carefully and systematically until only the shape of what others needed remained. The women called to her, time to return. Ka lifted her jars, but before turning away, she did something that changed everything. She tilted her head slightly toward the west, where the river bent, around a cluster of cottonwood trees. Then she looked at him once more, a question in her eyes. Royce understood. She was telling him where she'd be when she could slip away. If she could slip away, he should have shaken his head, should have turned his horse around right then. Instead, he found himself nodding almost imperceptibly. The walk back to camp felt longer than it was. Ka's heart hammered against her ribs, so hard she thought the women beside her might hear it. What had she just done? Signaled a complete stranger. Invited him to meet her in secret. The foolishness of it should have terrified her. But instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Possibility. That afternoon, while the camp rested through the worst heat, Kaya told Nala she needed to walk to think, to prepare her heart for what was coming. The lie tasted bitter, but Nala's pity made it easy. Her cousin nodded, squeezed her hand, let her go. No one wanted to deny a bride her last moments of solitude. She walked toward the cottonwoods with steady steps, fighting the urge to run. The trees provided cover from the camp's view. The river whispered over smooth stones. She waited, half expecting him not to come, half terrified that he would. Royce appeared from the upstream side, leading his horse on foot to muffle the sound. He stopped 20 feet away, giving her space, giving her the option to run if she wanted. Neither spoke for a long moment. Speaking would make this real, would turn it from an accidental encounter into a choice. Finally, Ka broke the silence. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. You've been watching. I have no point denying it. Why? Royce. Consider the question. The honest answer was complicated. Involved ghosts and failures and the particular hell of recognizing your own suffering in someone else's face. But she didn't need his history. She needed something more. Immediate. Because I know what trap looks like. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, but acknowledgement. They're going to marry me to a man I don't want. 3 days from now. I know you were listening. Yesterday. He nodded. Kaya took a step closer, her hands clenched at her sides. I won't survive him. Not the way I am now. He'll break me down until there's nothing left but obedience and fear. Royce had seen men like that. Had put a few in the ground. The elders won't let you refuse. The elders decided this. My refusing would shame them, would threaten their alliance, would put my entire family at risk. Her voice cracked. Slightly. They tell me it's sacrifice, that I should be proud to serve my people this way. And you? I think. There's a difference between sacrifice and execution. She looked at him directly now, and he saw the steel. Beneath her fear, I think they're just calling it something pretty so they can sleep at night. Silence stretched. Between them, filled only by the river and the wind through the cottonwood leaves. Royce knew he should tell her he couldn't help. That getting between a tribe and their politics was a fast way to die, that he'd already lost everything once and wasn't eager to repeat the experience. But looking at her, at the desperate courage it had, taken to approach a stranger to speak truth to someone who owed her nothing, he found he couldn't walk away. Not yet. Why me? He asked. You don't know anything about me. I could be worse than him. Ka's laugh was bitter and knowing. Could you? Do you hit people who stumble near you? Do you treat women like property that talks? Do you take pleasure in fear? No. Then you're not worse. She wrapped her arms around herself, and you came back. Even though you didn't have to, that tells me something. It told him something, too, though he wasn't ready to examine what. I can't promise anything, Royce said carefully. But I'll come back tomorrow. Same time. No, it did. It wasn't a solution, but it was more than she'd had an hour ago. She turned to leave, then stopped. My name is Royce. She repeated it silently, memorizing it. A name was a beginning. Names meant people, were real, and real people sometimes did impossible things. As she walked back toward camp, Kaya felt the weight in her. Chest shift slightly. Still heavy, but no longer crushing. Tomorrow she'd return. Tomorrow, maybe they'd figure out what came next. Behind her, Royce stood by the river long after she disappeared. He just stepped onto a path that would either save them both or destroy what little piece he'd managed to build. The problem was he already knew which one was more likely, and he was going to walk it anyway. The sound reached the camp before the riders did. Hoof beats like thunder rolling across dry earth, deliberate and heavy. Gows. Hands froze over the basket she'd been weaving. She knew that rhythm. Everyone did. Takakota traveled with 6 men. Always. A show of strength that doubled as a warning. When he arrived somewhere, you felt it in your bones before you saw him. She forced her hands to keep moving to maintain the illusion of calm, even as her pulse hammered in her throat too. Days early. He wasn't supposed to come until tomorrow. The early arrival could only mean one thing. He wanted to catch them unprepared to assert his control over even the smallest details of this arrangement. The elders rushed to greet him, all gracious words and practiced smiles. Kaya watched from the women's area, her eyes tracking Takakota as he dismounted. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing more silver ornaments than any man needed. Each piece a trophy taken from someone weaker. His face might have been handsome once before cruelty carved, permanent lines around his mouth and eyes. He spoke to the elders without looking at them, his gaze sweeping the camp with proprietary assessment. When his eyes found Kaya, they lingered, not with desire or even interest, with inventory, checking that his purchase remained intact. She dropped her eyes immediately, playing the role expected of her, but her stomach turned. The formalities lasted an hour. Takakota accepted the hospitality with barely concealed impatience, as if their efforts to please him were obligation, rather than gift. When food was brought, he waved most of it away. When the elder men began their careful diplomatic conversation, he interrupted with demands disguised as questions. Then a boy, no more than 8 years old, accidentally knocked over a water vessel while refilling cups. The clay pot shattered. Water spread across the packed earth. The noise shattered the conversation. The boy froze, his eyes going wide with terror. "I'm sorry I didn't." Takakota's hand moved faster than the boy could flinch. The slap connected with a crack that silenced every voice in the camp. The child stumbled backward, his lip already bleeding, too shocked to even cry. Clumsy. Dakota's voice carried no emotion. He might have been commenting on the weather. Someone should teach him to be more careful. The boy's mother rushed forward, pulling her son away, murmuring apologies. The elders exchanged glances, but said nothing. 2. Challenged Takakota over something so minor would be to risk the entire alliance. A broken pot and a split lip weren't worth that. But Ka saw it differently. She saw her future in that child's bleeding mouth and terrified eyes. She saw months and years of walking carefully, of speaking quietly, of making herself smaller and smaller until she disappeared entirely. And she saw that no one would stop it. Not the elders, not her family, no one. From his position on the ridge, farther back now, more carefully hidden, Royce watched the scene through narrow eyes. He positioned himself to observe Takakota's arrival, needing to see the man who held Kaya's fate in his hands. What he saw confirmed everything he'd feared, and more. He'd known men like Takakota, had fought alongside some, had killed others, men who measured their worth by how much fear they could create, who confused brutality with strength. The casual violence against the child told Royce everything. This wasn't a man who lost his temper. This was a man who enjoyed control, who used pain as a tool to keep everyone around him off balance and afraid. Ka wouldn't last a month with him. If she resisted, he'd break her. If she submitted, she'd break herself. The gathering continued, but the energy had shifted. People moved more carefully now, conscious of the predator in their midst. Takakota seemed pleased by this, as if their fear was the respect he deserved. As evening approached, he announced he would stay in the camp until the wedding, not a request, a statement of fact. His men would need shelter, food, entertainment. The elders scrambled to accommodate, their earlier confidence replaced by nervous efficiency. Ka helped prepare the evening meal with mechanical precision, her mind racing. 2 days had become today and tomorrow. Time was collapsing and worse. Takakota would be here watching, making escape nearly impossible. She managed to slip away as darkness fell, moving toward the river under the pretense of fetching water. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the jar. When she reached the cottonwoods, she found Royce already waiting, his face grim in the fading light. "You saw," she said. "Not a question. I saw. That's who I'm supposed to marry. That's who I'm supposed to share my life with, bear children for, obey without question." Her voice cracked. "That's the honor my family keeps talking about." Royce stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "You can't go through with this. You think I don't know that?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "But what choice do I have? If I run alone, they'll find me within a day. I don't know these lands well enough. I don't have supplies. I don't." She stopped, her breath coming fast. "You have me." The words hung between them, simple and impossible. Ka looked at him. Really? Looked at him. This stranger who kept appearing on ridges, who understood cages, who'd come back when he didn't have to. "Why would you do this? You don't owe me anything. You'll make enemies of my entire people." "You could. I could." Royce's jaw tightened. But I've been dead before. Lived years as a ghost, just moving through days without purpose. Maybe that's worse. Or maybe you're just tired of watching people suffer when you could do something about it. He didn't deny it. Ka made her decision in the space of a heartbeat. Tomorrow might be too late. Takakota's presence changed everything. She needed to act now before the walls closed in. Completely. Can you be ready tonight? After the camp sleeps? Royce studied her face, seeing the determination beneath the fear. I can. But once we do this, there's no going back. They'll hunt us. They'll want blood for the insult. I know. Her voice steadied. But at least, I'll have chosen it. Whatever happens after, at least it will be my choice. He nodded slowly. The Northern Pass. 2 hours after the fires died down. I'll be waiting with horses and supplies. I'll be there. Ka turned to leave, but Royce caught her arm gently. If you change your mind, I won't. She pulled away. Not from anger, but from necessity. If she stayed any longer, someone would notice. 2 hours. I'll be there. She walked back through the darkness, her heart pounding with fear and something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. In the camp, Takakota sat by the central fire, laughing at something one of his men had said. The sound carried through the night like breaking glass. Ka didn't look at him. She returned to her shelter, helped Nala prepare the sleeping area, accepted her cousin's worried embrace. She lay down on her mat and waited, counting her breaths, watching the fire shadows dance on the hide walls. 2 hours. She just had to survive 2 more hours. Then she would do something no woman in her family had ever done. She would choose herself. The camp fell quiet gradually, like a living thing settling into sleep. Kaya lay perfectly still beside Nala, listening to her cousin's breathing slow and deepen. 1 hour passed, then another. The central fire burned down to embers, casting the camp in near darkness. When she finally moved, it was with the careful precision of someone who'd rehearsed every motion in her mind. She slipped from beneath the blanket without disturbing Nala, her feet finding the ground without sound. The small bundle she prepared earlier, a few dried strips of meat, a water skin, an extra layer against the cold, waited near the entrance where she'd hidden it beneath a basket. Her fingers closed around the leather strap. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain it would wake someone. But the camp remained still. Even Takakota's men, posted at intervals around the perimeter, seemed relaxed now. They weren't expecting trouble from within. She moved like smoke through the shadows, using every bit of cover the shelters provided. 20 steps to the edge of camp. 30, 40. The tree waited. Ahead, dark and promising. Freedom lay just beyond those trees. Then a hand caught her wrist. Ka's breath stopped. She turned slowly, expecting to see one of the guards, expecting her escape to end before it began. But it was Nala, her eyes bright with unshed tears in the darkness. You're leaving. Not a question, a statement of fact. Ka couldn't speak, couldn't lie to the cousin who'd been more sister than family. She nodded once. Naha's grip tightened, but not to restrain, to hold, to memorize. He'll hurt you if he catches you. He'll hurt me if he doesn't. Ka's voice came out as barely a whisper. You know what he is. You saw what he did to that boy. Tears spilled down Nala's cheeks. They'll come after you, everyone. It will be seen as an insult to the whole tribe. I know. Kaya squeezed her cousin's hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what this will bring on our family. But I can't. Her voice broke. I can't do this. I'd rather die, free than live as his possession. For a long moment, Nala just looked at her. Then she did something Ka hadn't expected. She released her wrist and stepped back, giving permission, giving blessing. Go quickly. I'll say I thought. You were restless, but I didn't think anything of it. It'll buy you time. Ka pulled her cousin into a fierce embrace. Thank you for understanding, for letting me go. Don't thank me yet. Nala's voice was thick with emotion. Just survive this. Find a way to be happy. That will be thanks enough. Then Ka was moving. Again. Faster now. Urgency overriding caution. She reached the tree and plunged into the darkness beyond, branches catching at her clothes and hair. Behind her, the camp remained, silent. Ahead, somewhere in the night, Royce waited. The northern pass wasn't far, a gap between two rocky hills where game trails converged. She found him more by memory than sight, her eyes adjusting slowly to the starlight filtering through the trees. When she emerged into the small clearing, she saw him immediately. Roy stood beside two horses already saddled and loaded with supplies. He'd been ready for over an hour, waiting with the patience of someone who'd spent years learning to be. Still, when he saw her, his shoulders dropped slightly with relief. "I thought maybe you'd change your mind," he said, quietly. Kaya shook her head, breathless from running and fear and the weight of what she'd just done. "I thought I'd wake the entire camp. My cousin caught me leaving." His hand went to his weapon. "Did she? She let me go. Gave me her blessing." Ka looked back toward the camp, knowing she'd never see her family the same way again, knowing this choice would scar them all. "We need to leave now before they realize I'm gone." Royce moved to one of the horses, a sturdy mare with kind eyes. "Can you ride?" "Yes." But Ka stopped as understanding dawned. Two horses meant two riders met. Distance between them. Smart, practical, but also alone. Then voices erupted from the direction of the camp, shouting, angry and alarmed. Someone had discovered her absence far sooner than expected. Royce's jaw tightened. "They're faster than I thought. We need to move. They'll catch us. They know these paths better than anyone. Not if we go through the canyon pass. It's dangerous at night, but they won't expect it." More voices now. Closer. The sound of men mounting horses of organized pursuit beginning. Torches flared to life in the distance, bobbing points of light spreading out like searching fingers. Panic clawed at Ka's chest. This was happening too fast. They were too close. She could hear Takakota's voice above the others, cold with rage, giving orders. Her legs felt weak, her breath coming in short gasps. She looked at Royce, her eyes wide with terror. The words came out raw and desperate, torn from somewhere deep inside where pride and dignity had been crushed beneath the weight of too many impossible choices. "Take me away. Please take me away before they force me to marry him. Before they drag me back and I lose even this chance. I'm begging you. Take me away. From here." Royce looked at her, really looked at her, and saw everything in that moment. The fear, yes, but also the courage it took to ask. The desperation of someone making a final stand against a fate worse than death. He'd been that, desperate once. He remembered what it felt like to have one last chance and know that if you didn't take it, you'd disappear. He made his decision in the space between heartbeats. Without a word, Royce reached for her, his hands closing around her waist. In one smooth motion, he lifted her onto his horse, settling her in front of the saddle. "Hold tight to the saddle horn. Don't let go no matter what happens. But the other horse will give them something to chase. While we take a different path." He swung up behind her, one arm coming around her waist to steady her, the other taking the reins. His body was solid and warm against her back, an anchor in the chaos. The pursuing voices grew louder. Torchlight flickered through the trees, closer with every second. Royce kicked the horse into motion, sending the second mare running in the opposite direction with a sharp whistle and slap to her hind quarters. She bolted east while they turned north, plunging into the darkness at a dangerous speed. Ka pressed back against Royce's chest, her hands white-knuckled on the saddle horn as trees blurred past. Behind them, the shouts split as some pursuers followed the riderless horse. But not all. Some stayed on their trail, persistent and furious. "They're still coming," she said, her voice barely audible over the pounding hoof beats. "I know." Royce guided the horse through terrain that made Ka's stomach drop. Narrow paths along steep slopes, through dense brush that tore at their clothes, across a stream that made the horse stumble. Each moment felt like the edge of disaster. But he didn't slow down, couldn't. Behind them, the pursuit pressed closer. narrowing the distance with local knowledge and fresh mounts. Ka felt Royce's arm tighten around her waist as they approached a steep descent. Hold on, this is going to be rough. The horse plunged down a rocky slope in controlled chaos, hooves scrabbling for purchase, momentum carrying them forward in a barely controlled fall. Ka bit back a scream, trusting the stranger with her life because she had no other choice. They reached the bottom intact, the horse breathing hard but steady behind them. The pursuit had fallen back, hesitating at the dangerous descent in darkness, but they'd be coming, just more carefully now. Royce urged the horse into a grounding gallop across. Flatte terrain. The canyons ahead, once we're through, we'll have better chances. Ka didn't respond. Couldn't. Reality was crashing over her in waves. She'd done it. She'd actually escaped. She was pressed against a stranger on a horse, fleeing into darkness with armed men hunting them, with no clear destination and no promise of survival. And for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Thank you, she whispered into the wind. Thank you for lifting me onto your horse, for not leaving me behind. Royce's voice was quiet but firm near her ear. I wasn't going to leave you to that. Not once I saw what he was. The canyon loomed ahead, a deep gash in the earth barely visible in starlight. It was their path to freedom or their tomb. There was no way to know which until they were through it, and behind them, the hunters regrouped, their rage burning brighter than their torches. The canyon swallowed them whole. Darkness pressed in from both sides, walls of stone rising, invisible into the night sky. The path, if it could be called that, was barely wider than the horse, forcing them to slow to a careful walk. Each step echoed off the walls, broadcasting their location to anyone listening. Kaya felt Royce's tension in the rigid set of his shoulders, the careful way he guided the horse around obstacles she couldn't see. One wrong step here would mean a fall into crevices she could only sense in the darkness. Death will be quick, at least. How do you know this path? She asked, her voice low. I don't. His answer was honest and terrifying. But no, they won't follow us through here at night. Too dangerous. They'll wait for dawn or try to circle around and cut us off on the other side. And if we don't make it through before they get there, then we fight. Simple. Final. As if he'd already accepted that possibility and made peace with it. They continued in silence. Nothing but the careful clip of hooves on stone and their own breathing. The canyon seemed endless, twisting and turning. Sometimes, so narrow Ka's legs brushed the walls on both sides. Once the horse balked at a gap in the path, a place where erosion had carved away the trail, leaving only a treacherous ledge. Royce dismounted, moving ahead on foot to test the stability. Kaya watched him disappear into the darkness, heard the scatter of loose stones, then his return. It'll hold, but we go slow and you lean into me, not away. Understand? She nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. Yes. He remounted and they crossed inch by inch. Kaya pressing herself back against his chest so hard she could feel his heartbeat. Steady, controlled, opposite of the panic, screaming in her own chest. When they reached solid ground again, she let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. You did good, Royce said quietly. Most people freeze on crossings like that. I was terrified. Being terrified but doing it anyway. That's what courage is. They emerged from the canyon as dawn broke. Over the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale gold. The landscape opened before them, rolling, hills dotted with sage and juniper, a vast expanse that offered both freedom and exposure. Anywhere their pursuers could see them, they could see their pursuers. The horse was exhausted, foam flecking its neck, breathing labored. They needed to rest, to water the animal, to tend to themselves. But stopping meant vulnerability. Royce guided them to a shallow depression between hills where a seasonal creek still held water. He helped Ka down. Her legs nearly gave out when they hit solid ground, then tended to the horse first. Smart priorities. Without the animal, they were dead. Ka knelt by the creek, splashing cold water on her face, drinking deeply. Her hands were shaking. Now that the immediate terror had passed, reaction set in. She'd left everything, her family, her home, her entire life for what? A stranger and a horse in the uncertain promise of freedom. Regrets already? Royce asked, reading something in her expression. No, she was surprised to find it was true. Terror, yes. Doubt about whether we'll survive this. Absolutely. But not regret. Even if they catch us tomorrow, at least tonight, I chose my own path. He studied her with something like respect. You're tougher than you look. I've had to be. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold morning air. What's your plan? Where are we going? North first, then west. There's a settlement 3 days' ride from here. Mixed population. Apache white settlers traders easy to disappear in. We can rest there, resupply, decide next steps. 3 days. Ka looked at the horse. Already spent from one night of hard travel. Can we make it? We'll have to. Royce pointed to the south where dust rose in the distance. Riders. Multiple riders. They're coming. Gus Stolmut. Dropped. I thought you said they wouldn't follow through the canyon at night. I said it was too dangerous. Didn't say they wouldn't do it anyway. He moved to the horse, checking the saddle. Takakota wants you back bad. Enough to risk it. Or maybe he's just that angry. Both. Ka thought of the rage in his voice when he discovered her gone. Men like him didn't tolerate defiance. He'll see this as a personal insult. He won't stop until he has me back or we're both dead. Then we keep moving. Royce offered his hand to help. Her mount. The horse can rest when we're safe. Can't rest if we're dead. They rode hard through the morning, pushing northeast now, using the sun to navigate. Behind them, the dust cloud grew closer. Their pursuers were fresh and had better horses. Simple math said they'd be caught by nightfall. We need an advantage, Kaya said, looking back at the approaching riders. Something to slow them down or throw them off our trail. Royce was silent for a moment, thinking, there's a place ahead. Old rockfall that created a natural bottleneck. If we can get there first, we can defend it. Force them to come at us 1 or 2 at a time instead of all at once. How many are following us? 6, maybe 7. And there are 2 of us, one of whom isn't armed. You know how to use a weapon. Ka thought of the small knife hidden in her bundle. She'd used it to prepare food, to work leather, to do 100 domestic tasks. Using it on a person was different. I can learn quickly. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. You might just survive this after all. They reached the bottleneck with maybe an hour to spare. Royce positioned them behind a cluster of large boulders that offered cover and a clear view of the approach. He handed Kaya a small pistol from his saddlebag, showing her. Quickly how to load and fire. Last resort only, he said. If something happens to me and they get through, nothing's going to happen to you, Ka. His voice was serious. If they get past me, you run. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. You run and you keep running until you can't anymore. Promise me. She wanted to argue to say she wouldn't abandon him, but the hard truth in his eyes stopped her. I promise. They waited as the dust cloud resolved into riders. 6 of them, just as Royce had estimated. Takakota rode in front, his face twisted with fury, visible even at a distance. When he saw them positioned in the rocks, he raised his hand and his men spread out, looking for another way through. There wasn't one, not without going miles around. The geography had given them this one advantage. Takakota called out, his voice carrying across the distance. Send her out, and I'll let you ride away. You have my word. Royce didn't respond. She belongs to me. Takakota continued. She was promised. This theft cannot stand. Gah! Felt her jaw clench. Theft as if she were property to be stolen rather than a person making a choice. She doesn't belong to anyone. Royce called back. She chose to leave. Let her go. Let her go. Takakota's laugh was sharp and mean. You think you could just take what's mine and walk away? You think there are no consequences? I think she'd rather die free than live as your prisoner. And I think you know it too. That's why you're so angry. The truth of it hung in the air between them. Takakota's expression darkened further. He made a gesture to his men. They began to dismount, preparing to advance on foot. Royce's hand went to his rifle. "This is your last chance to turn back." "No." Takakota drew his own weapon. "This is yours." The first shot split the morning. Air and everything erupted into chaos. Bullets ricocheted off stone, sending chips of rock flying. Capreset herself, flat behind the boulder, her heart slamming against her ribs. The sound of gunfire was different than she'd imagined. Sharper, more violent, each crack making her flinch. Royce fired, with careful precision, not wasting ammunition. Each shot forced Takakota's men to take cover, to rethink their approach. But there were 6 of them and 2 defenders. Simple numbers worked against survival. "They're trying to flank us," Royce said, his voice steady despite the chaos. He shifted position, keeping his rifle trained on the left side where 2 men were working their way through the rocks. "Stay low. Don't move unless I tell you." Another volley of shots peppered their position. One bullet struck so close to Ka's head that she felt the displaced air against her cheek. She bit back a scream, her fingers digging into the dirt. Then she saw movement on the right, a third man using the distraction to advance from the opposite direction. In seconds, he'd have a clear shot at Royce's exposed side. Right side, she gasped behind the tall rock. Royce swung around, fired twice. The first shot missed. The second found its mark. The man stumbled backward, his weapon falling from his hands as he went down hard. He didn't get back up. The attack paused. Dakota shouted something in his language, angry and commanding. His remaining men repositioned, more cautious now. They lost one. The price of this pursuit had just become real. "We can't hold this position forever," Kaya said. The small pistol felt heavy and useless in her hands. "They'll find a way through eventually." "I know." Royce reloaded quickly, his movements practiced and efficient. "But every minute we delay them is another minute of distance we can put between us when we run." "When we run, not if." "There's no if. We're outnumbered and low on ammunition. The only question is when we break for it and where we go." As if to emphasize his point, gunfire erupted again, more coordinated this time, coming from multiple angles simultaneously. They were trying to pin Royce down, keep him from returning fire while others advanced. It was working. Royce ducked as bullets struck all around their position. Too many to answer effectively. Kaya saw one of Takakota's men sprint from cover to cover, getting closer. Then another followed, moving like wolves closing in on wounded prey. "We need to go now," Royce said. Suddenly, he grabbed their supplies, threw them over his shoulder, and whistled sharply for the horse. The animal had been ground-tied 20 yards back, sheltered behind a larger outcropping. It came at his call, well-trained and steady despite the noise. "Can you run?" he asked Ka. She nodded, though her legs felt weak with fear. "On my signal, we go for the horse together. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'll be right behind you." Takakota saw them preparing to flee. He rose from cover, shouting orders, his men surging forward. Royce laid down, covering fire, forcing them back momentarily. "Now!" Ka ran. Her legs found strength she didn't know she had, pumping across the open ground toward the horse. She heard Royce. Behind her, heard him fire again, heard the answering shots that came too close. The horse danced nervously, but held its ground. She reached it first, grabbed the saddle to pull herself up. Then Royce was there, shoving her upward with one hand while firing backward with the other. He vaulted up behind her in one fluid motion, kicked the horse into a gallop before his weight had fully settled. Bullets winded past them as they raced away from the bottleneck. The horse stretched into a full run, hooves pounding earth in desperate rhythm. Behind them, Takakota's men reached, their own horses mounting to give chase. But the delay had worked. They had distance now. Not much, but enough. The landscape changed as they rode, opening into wider valleys with more places to hide, more options for evasion. Royce guided them through a series of turns and switchbacks, using terrain to break line of sight, making it harder to track them. The horse was reaching its limit, foam flying from its mouth, but it kept going with the determination of an animal that understood survival. They rode for hours, the sun climbing high and merciless. Finally, when Ka thought she might fall from exhaustion, Royce slowed their pace. The pursuers had fallen back. Either they'd lost the trail or decided the cost was getting too high. He guided them to a narrow ravine with a trickle of water running through it. The horse drank gratefully while Royce helped Ka down. Her legs gave out, completely this time. She sat hard on the ground, her entire body shaking. "Are you hurt?" Royce knelt beside her, checking for injuries she might not have noticed in the chaos. "No, just terrified." She looked up at him, seeing the exhaustion carved into his face, the new lines around his eyes. "You saved us." Again, "We saved us." He sank down beside her, finally allowing himself to show fatigue. "You spotted that man on the right. If you hadn't, this would have ended differently." They sat in silence. For a moment, the reality of what had just happened settling over them. They'd been in a gunfight. Someone had fallen. They fled for their lives and barely escaped. And it wasn't over. It wouldn't be over until they'd put enough distance between themselves and Takakota that he either gave up or couldn't find them. Kai became aware of how close Royce was, sitting, his shoulder nearly touching hers. She could smell gunpowder and sweat and horse on him, could see the tension still coiled in his muscles. This man had risked everything for her, had fought for her, had chosen her. Freedom over his own safety. "Why?" she asked quietly. "You still haven't really told me. Why did you do this?" Royce was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "I had a wife once, young, beautiful, full of life. Her father sold her to settle a debt, traded her to a man who saw her as property, not a person. I was too late to stop it, too young to stand against what everyone said was right and proper." Ka's breath caught. What happened to her? She lasted 2 years before she took her own life rather than endure another day with him. His jaw tightened. "Yvette, spent every year since wondering if I could have done something different. If I'd been braver, stronger, willing to fight when it mattered. So when you saw me, I saw a second chance to not be too late, to not let another woman disappear into a cage because I was too afraid to act." He looked at her directly. "Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe saving you is really about saving myself from that failure." Ka reached out, placing her hand over his. His skin was warm, callous from work and weather. "Then we're both being selfish because I'm using your guilt to buy my freedom." Something like a smile touched his lips. Fair trade. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither was ready to name. Then the horse nickered nervously, ears swiveling toward the direction they'd come from. Royce, tensed, his hand going to his weapon. In the distance, barely audible, came the sound of hoof beats. They'd been found. Again, and this time, they had nowhere left to run. The ravine offered no defensible position, no high ground. Nothing but narrow walls and a dead end if they went deeper. Royce's eyes scanned their surroundings with the calculated desperation of someone running out of options. "How many rounds do you have left?" Ka asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He checked. 8, maybe 9 if I'm lucky. Not enough. They both knew it. If Dakota came with his full force, those bullets would buy them minutes at most. The hoof beats grew closer, but something was different about the rhythm. Royce tilted his head, listening intently. That's only 2 horses, maybe 3. A scouting party where the others gave up and turned back. He didn't sound like he believed it. "Stay here with the horse. I'm going to see who's coming alone. That's if it's a trap. I need you free to run. If it's not, I'll signal." He pressed the pistol back into her hands. "You remember how to use this?" She nodded, her throat tight. Royce moved up the ravine toward the entrance, keeping low and silent. Kaya watched him disappear around the bend, then turned her attention to the horse. The animal was spent, sides heaving, head low. Even if she needed to run, she wouldn't get far. Minutes crawled past. The hoof-beat tat stopped. Voices carried on the wind. Low. Conversational, not aggressive. Then Royce appeared at the bend, his expression unreadable. Come up here. Slowly. Ka's heart hammered as she climbed toward him, the pistol heavy in her hand. When she rounded the corner, she saw 3 riders at the ravine entrance. But these weren't Dakota's men. One was a woman, older with streaks of gray in her long dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. The other 2 were younger men, armed but not hostile. They sat their horses with the ease of experienced riders, watching Ka and Royce with careful assessment. The woman spoke first, her voice carrying authority. You're the ones Takakota is hunting, not question. Kaya felt her stomach drop. Are you here to take us back? No. The woman's expression was complicated. Part disgust, part sympathy. I'm here because my sister's daughter is being watched day and night now, because Takakota's rage at losing you has made him tighten his control over everyone. Because what you did, running has consequences for people who had nothing to do with it. Guilt crashed over Ka like a wave. I'm sorry. I didn't want him not finished. The woman raised her hand. Those consequences, some of them are good. You running showed other women that cages can be escaped, that the elders' decisions aren't absolute law written by the spirits. 3 girls have refused arrangements since you left. The council is in chaos. Ka didn't know what to say. She thought only of her own survival, not of starting something larger. Takakota is behind us. The woman continued. Maybe an hour. He sent us ahead to track you to report back your location. She met Kaya's eyes directly. We found you. Now we're going to ride back and tell him you went west toward the salt flats. That should buy you a day, maybe 2. Why would you help us? Royce asked, his hand still near his weapon. Because I had a daughter once. She was promised to a good man, they said, a man of standing. She lasted 3 months before she walked into the river with stones in her pockets. The woman's voice cracked slightly. I won't watch that happen again if I can prevent it. One of the younger men shifted in his saddle. We need to go. If we're gone too long, he'll suspect. The woman nodded but kept her eyes on Ka. There's a settlement north of here. 2 days hard ride. Mixed people. Apache white. Settlers. Traders. No one tribe controls it. You can disappear there if you're careful. We were heading there. Already, Roy said. Then go faster. And when you get there, find a woman named Sarah Whitmore. Tell her Lamasi sent you. She'll help you get further away if needed. Ka stepped forward close to tears. Thank you. I don't know how to repay, survive, be happy. That's payment. Enough. Lamasi turned her horse. And maybe someday help another woman escape her cage. That's how we change things. One freed woman at a time. They rode away, leaving Ka and Royce alone with new information and borrowed time. We need to move, Royce said. If Takakota discovers they lied, he'll double back fast. They returned to their exhausted horse, transferred what supplies they could carry to their own backs to lighten the load, and set off at a Apache. The animal couldn't take another hard run, not without collapsing. As they traveled, Kaya found herself walking beside Royce rather than riding. Her body was sore, her feet blistering in her worn shoes. But something about the steady rhythm of walking felt grounding after the chaos of the past day. You're quiet, Royce observed after an hour of silence. I'm thinking about what Lamasi said about other women refusing arrangements. Because of what I did. Kaya shook her head. I just wanted to save myself. I didn't mean to start something. The best revolutions usually start that way. One person saying no when everyone expects. Yes, but the consequences would have come anyway. Men like Takakota don't need excuses to tighten control. They just look for them. He glanced at her. You gave those women hope. That's dangerous to people who rule through fear. They walked in silence for a while longer. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of amber and gold. Kaya found herself acutely aware of Royce beside her, the steady confidence in his stride, the way he constantly scanned their surroundings, the quiet strength that had kept them alive. Tell me about her, she said softly. Your wife. What was her name? Royce's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then Margaret called Maggie by. People who loved her. She had a laugh that could light up the darkest room. She wanted to teach children to start school someday. His voice grew rough. She died never having done any of the things she dreamed about. Carr reached out, touching his arm gently. I'm sorry. I am too. Every day, he looked at her, his gray eyes holding depths of old pain. But maybe helping you escape that same fate gives her suffering some meaning. Maybe it means she didn't die for nothing. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in Caius' chest. This man who'd seemed so controlled, so self-contained, was carrying wounds as deep as her own. They were both survivors of different prisons, both searching for something beyond mere survival. When this is over, she said quietly, when we're safe and settled somewhere, what will you do? I don't know. Haven't thought. That far ahead in years, he met her eyes. What about you? I want to live. Not just exist, not just survive, actually live, make choices even small ones. Wake up each day and decide what that day will hold. She smiled slightly. Maybe that sounds simple. It sounds perfect. The moment stretched between them, charged with recognition and possibility. Then the horse nickered, breaking the spell. They both turned to see what had caught its attention. Smoke rose in the distance, thin and dark against the evening sky. But it came from the south, from the direction they'd traveled, from where Takakota's main camp would be. What does that mean? Ka asked. Royce's expression was grim. It means he's burning something, making a statement, showing his people what happens when someone defies him. Oh no, my family. Probably shelters, supplies, things that can be rebuilt. He's angry, not stupid. He needs those people. But Kaya heard the uncertainty in his voice. They both knew that angry men did unpredictable things. And Takakota's rage had been building for days. We keep moving, Roy said firmly. Whatever's happening back there, we can't help them by getting caught. The best thing we can do is reach that settlement, prove that escape is possible, and maybe help others do the same. Nodded, though guilt sat heavy in her